What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Now, these videos usually come out on Mondays, but yesterday when I was in the middle of recording the intro, I learned of the Tyler Toffoli trade, so I had to change things up a little bit. Still wanted to get this episode up this week though, so I figured you guys would rather get it on a Tuesday instead of waiting till next Monday. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to leave a comment on the post. A lot of really interesting questions this week, so let's get right into it. This first one comes from Terry Webster, who says, if the Oilers don't finish in the playoffs, given the changes he's made to the roster, for better or for worse, adding a controversial player in Evander Kane, and now firing both the head and assistant coaches, does Hall of Fame GM Ken Holland still hold the GM chair in Edmonton come next season? And of course, love the content. Thank you for the kind words. This is honestly a really tough question. Part of me feels like they would still give Ken Holland next season to try and make things right, to try to give him another shot. But then again, like you said, with all the changes he's made to the roster, if they don't even make the playoffs this season, especially in a Pacific Division that isn't great, I almost feel like the Oilers ownership's hand is going to be forced and they're going to have to make a move. And it's not like a lot of the moves Ken Holland made everyone was wrong about, like we all thought they were going to be great and they just haven't worked out. A lot of the moves he's made since becoming GM of the Oilers, people heavily criticized at the time he made the move, like the Duncan Keith trade for an example. I don't think the Warren Fogle for Ethan Bear trade has worked out particularly well for the Oilers either. Signing Cody Ceci, I feel like Ceci's more better suited as like a third pairing defenseman, not someone you sign to a 4-year deal to play on your second pair. This next question comes from Marshall PK, who says, in a redraft, who would be the first pick in 2019, Zegras or Jack Hughes? I still feel like it would be Jack Hughes. With all the information we know now, how players have performed since the 2019 NHL draft, I feel like the top three would consist of probably Hughes, Zegras, and Sider, but again, I do still feel like Hughes would be the first overall pick. I feel like he has the highest upside of all the players drafted in 2019. Sure, he didn't have an incredible rookie season, but he was in the NHL in his draft plus 1 year while Trevor Zegras was playing in college, while Sider was playing overseas. Hughes has been in the NHL immediately since being drafted. He's gotten better every single year, and obviously this season, even though he missed a pretty good chunk of games, he was named an all-star. When he's been in the lineup, he's played fantastic for New Jersey, so I still feel like even with everything we know now, he would be the first overall pick in a 2019 redraft. The next question comes from ML Matthew, who says, which teams do you see going after a starting goalie at the deadline? If so, which goalies? Love the content. Thank you for the kind words. Obviously the easiest one here, and the first team that comes to my mind, I'm sure it's the first team that comes to a lot of your guys' mind when you see this question, the Edmonton Oilers. I think they still need to figure out their goaltending situation if they want to be a legit threat in the playoffs, if they even get there. Stuart Skinner has actually looked pretty good in the small sample size we've seen him play this season. He just got a shutout last night against the San Jose Sharks, but do you really want to rely on a rookie goaltender who's relatively unproven if you're a team that has, Stanley Cup aspirations? Probably not. I still feel like they're going to take a good crack at trying to pry Marc-Andre Fleury out of Chicago. And another team that has actually been heavily rumored to be interested in Marc-Andre Fleury and have actually tried to acquire him is the Washington Capitals, but apparently Marc-Andre Fleury won't accept a trade to Washington, which I find kind of hilarious. A lot of people speculate it's because he was a Pittsburgh Penguin for so long, and obviously the Penguins and Capitals have had some pretty heated battles in the postseason, and those teams are kind of rivals. But if those rumors are true and the Washington Capitals were indeed trying to get Marc-Andre Fleury, then they're probably in the market for starting goaltender. So those are the two teams I'll mention, the Edmonton Oilers and the Washington Capitals. Moving on now, this question comes from Hugh Barkhurst, who says, do you think St. Louis will earn a contract with Montreal or just ride out this season as interim head coach and then that's it? This is a pretty interesting question. Obviously the easiest answer would be to say it depends on how the remainder of the Canadian season goes, but I don't really think they're going to care about results all that much. I mean, when you consider where they're at right now and what point we are at in the season, they probably don't want to win very much anymore to get the best odds at the first overall pick. One thing I will say, I feel like a lot of it's going to come down to player development and how the players feel about Marty St. Louis as the coach. One of the early returns under him, even though it's been a really small sample size, Cole Caulfield looks so much better. He's playing with confidence, he's playing a lot looser, like he's not afraid to make mistakes, then he's playing his game, so that's been nice to see. If I were to make a prediction, I would honestly say they probably give him a shot at being the head coach next season as well. I mean, is there a little bit of risk involved because he's never been a professional coach before? Sure. I mean, they literally took this guy off of coaching a Pee-wee team, I believe. He hasn't even coached like a major junior team or anything like that. But obviously Marty St. Louis has an amazing mind for the game, and watching post-game interviews and players' reactions to the team signing him as the coach, it seems like the players love him. So I definitely think there's a good chance he sticks around at least through next season. Next up, this question comes from Jason Coladonato, who says, out of all players drafted from 2018 2018 to 2021, who do you think is the biggest steal so far or will be, rounds 2 through 7? I feel like it's way too early to tell when it comes to the 2021 and 2020 draft. The player I'll actually go with is Igor Sharangovich of the New Jersey Devils. He was a 5th round pick in 2018. 5th round picks rarely make it to the NHL to begin with, so the fact that he's already a productive NHL player after just being a 5th round pick, 4 years ago, I feel like that's really impressive. In a redraft, he's probably a 1st round pick, I'd imagine. This next question comes from Hockey, who says, Devon Toews is playing very good this season. Do you think that we could see him get top 7 to 10 in Norris voting? He has been a beast this season. He was my pick for Colorado's most underrated player this year in the video I made a couple of days ago because he plays on such a stacked team, shares the blue line with Cale Makar. But yeah, Devon Toews this season has legitimately been one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire NHL. There was a period of time where he was leading all defensemen in points per game. I don't think he does anymore, but he's still one of the top guys in that category. His defensive numbers are amazing. He plays like 25.5 minutes a night. If the season ended today, he would be a top 10 Norris candidate 1000%. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen from now till the end of the season, but if he keeps playing at this level, it would be a crime if he didn't at least finish top 10 in Norris voting. Next up, this question comes from Ninja.tv, who says, one thing about the NHL that absolutely grinds your gears can be about today's game or the organization itself. Channel your inner torts. I really didn't have to think too long and hard about this one, especially after seeing how insane the NBA trade deadline was and how many big trades happened there. For me, the thing that grinds my gear most about the NHL is just like the lack of player movement and lack of bold decision making by general managers. And it's not just when it comes to trades, like the whole offer sheet thing as well, how GMs are like scared to ruin relationships by sending offer sheets. Like, your goal is to make your team better, your goal is to win a Stanley Cup, and it just seems like every GM is just so reluctant to swing for the fences and to make big moves. So I'd say that's my biggest pet peeve, especially as somebody who makes content. I love player movement, and it seems like of all the major professional sports leagues, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL is definitely the most boring when it comes to player movement. Next up, we have a question from Dylan Carton, who says, if you were the GM of the Flyers, what would you do and what direction would you take the team going into the future? I would definitely go through a hard reset. This is a team that's just been mediocre for a long time. They make the playoffs one year, they miss the next. They make it, they miss. They make it, they miss. Now this year, they're finally going to have 2 consecutive years where they miss the playoffs. It seems like that anyways. But I just feel like it's time to go in another direction. Maybe not even like a full-fledged rebuild, but do something similar to what the New York Rangers did back when they traded, McDonough, Zuccarello, and those guys. Like just a hard retool. So that's definitely the direction I would take the team. I think they should be very aggressive in terms of selling at this year's deadline. Next up, this question comes from Alex, who says, okay, odd question, but I'd love to discuss this. I find it unfair that teams essentially get punished for having a player get injured mid-game and then have to play down. If teams have healthy scratches in the building, do you think they should be allowed to suit up mid-game if someone is injured and cannot return? I feel like it would be more fair and makes sense since you're just replacing an unforeseen casualty. Really interesting and creative question here. I can't see it ever happening though, and my reasoning for that is because, yeah, we see injuries all the time in the NHL. It's just something that happens. Sometimes we see multiple guys go down from the same team in a single game, but usually we never see so many guys go down from one team in the same game where it like affects if they can finish the game or not, or something extreme like that. For an example, say 3 forwards and 1 defenseman go down injured and cannot return, you still have 3 forward lines and 2.5 D pairings to finish the game with. I mean, some teams play that way on purpose. They'll shorten the bench if it's a close game. If players are playing bad, they'll bench them. 99.9% of the times, teams are going to be fine to finish the game, and then obviously after the game, you can call guys up, you can bring guys into the lineup that were healthy scratch for the next game. So even though I do think it's a pretty interesting idea that you came up with, I just don't really ever see it happening for those reasons. This next question comes from Juan Jose Pazmino, who says, is Lundell Knight and a first too much for Jacob Chychrun? 1000%, that is way too much. I know what you're referring to as well. I feel like it was a pretty prevalent insider that, brought this idea up. If Florida wanted to trade for Chychrun, that would likely be a, kind of package we could see them trade for him. I don't think there's any chance we see anything close to that happen though. I feel like Anton Lundell by himself should be an untouchable for the Florida Panthers. So yes, I definitely feel like Lundell, a first, and Spencer Knight is way too much. This next question comes from Connor Hellebuck, who says, with the amount of attention shown onto cross-checking penalties this regular season, do you think there will be as many cross-checking penalties in the playoffs? I know that the NHL said they were going to focus on that and call it more, and I have noticed it. Like, I've seen cross-checks this season be called on multiple occasions that just weren't called in the past couple seasons, or, you know, ever really. But it's super inconsistent. Like, for every cross-check and penalty called in the game, there's like 10 more that could be called. I just don't really know what the standard is. And judging by how the NHL just officiates the postseason, I can't really see them calling as many cross-check and penalties in the playoffs as they do in the regular season, even though there's probably going to be a lot more cross-checks. Refs love to swallow their whistles in the playoffs and let players get away with things that they wouldn't get away with in the regular season. That's just how it is. I think it's incredibly stupid because you're basically playing an entirely different game. And now for the final question of today's Ask Me Anything, this comes from Benjamin Stang, who says, who's the biggest rookie surprise this season aside from Tanner Jeannot? My answer to this would actually be Lucas Raymond. If you're somebody who watched my videos throughout the offseason and have been subscribed to the channel for a while, you'd probably know that I didn't even think that Lucas Raymond was going to make the Red Wings this season. Or I guess I should say out of training camp. I figured we'd probably see him get his 9-game stint, but I thought he was going to spend the majority of the time in Grand Rapids, and I feel like honestly there's a good chance that would have happened, but Jacob Vrana going down in training camp obviously opened up a huge spot in the Red Wings top 6. So yeah, just based off of the fact that I didn't even think he was going to make the team out of camp, and not only has he made the team, he's been on the first line all season and has been the rookie points leader basically all season as well. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I said at the start, huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to leave a question on the post. There were so many good ones this week. You guys really make this series so much fun for me to do. If you guys enjoyed and you want to see another episode next week, then be sure to leave the video a like. That's the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you soon.